My guest tonight has spent decades working towards political revolution and just today suspended his presidential campaign. Please welcome to a Late Show, Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator, thanks so much for being here. It's an honor to have you after your announcement today.
Well, it's great to be with you, and thanks for inviting me, Stephen.
Well, obviously, there is one question I have to ask you. Why is tonight different from all other nights?
Well, obviously, for us, it's the end of our effort to become president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to take this opportunity to thank the many hundreds of thousands of grassroots activists, people who have been knocking on doors, people who contributed $18 a contribution for making the campaign possible. It has been an absolute joy and a privilege to represent those folks.
Senator, why is now the right time, in your opinion, to end your campaign? You say you're still interested in getting delegates and amassing more delegates and taking them to the convention. Why stop the campaign now?
Well, I think for a couple of reasons. I think the mathematics is pretty clear that I can't win. And while you can make the argument that you should run a campaign, fight for your ideas, bring people together, even if you can't win, I think the pandemic that we are experiencing right now makes even that virtually impossible. We don't hold rallies. Our people can't knock on doors. And I think by ending the campaign now, by focusing on my job as the United States Senate to help deal with this pandemic, to deal with the economic collapse that we're experiencing, I think it's a better use of my time. And I think that makes the most sense to me right now.
In 2015, when you launched your first campaign for president, you said that today we begin a political revolution. You may not reach the promised land, but you've been to the mountaintop. You've seen that you've changed the political landscape, especially for the Democratic Party. What do you think the greatest influence of your campaign will be ultimately?
Well, I think what we have managed to do, Stephen, and not me alone, I mean, we've done it with fantastic surrogates, with great people all over the country. We have asked the American people a simple question, and that is why? Why do we have so much income and wealth inequality? Why do we have 3 people owning more wealth than the bottom half of America and 500,000 people sleeping out on the streets tonight? Why are we the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right? I'm talking to you 50 miles away from the Canadian border. For decades, they have managed to provide quality care to all of their people at 50% of the cost that we spend. Why are so many of our kids leaving college deeply in debt and so many others not even able to afford to go to college? Why aren't we more aggressive in dealing with climate change? Why do we have more people in jail than any other country? So I think raising those questions and saying to people that, you know what, that doesn't have to be the case. That if we are prepared to come together and have the courage to take on the greed of a corporate elite, many of whom could care less about ordinary people, all they need is more they want is more and more money. Do we really need to have families in America worth more than $100 billion when half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck, when we're looking today at doctors and nurses who can't acquire the masks they need or putting their lives on the line, and yet we are the wealthiest country in the history of the world? How does all of that happen? So I think maybe our major contribution has been to ask the simple question, why? Why are we where we are today? And then where do we have to go? Do we have to be living in a society where there is so much greed on top? Can't we all come together and create a decent life for all of us?
Well, your dropping out of the race leaves Joe Biden the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party. Have you spoken to the vice president since you made this decision?
Yes, I have actually, and I've spoken to him, in the last couple of weeks. It's no great secret that Joe Biden's politics are different than mine. But I have known Joe since I came to the Senate in 2006, worked with him when he was vice president in the Obama administration. And what I would say to people is that Joe is a very decent human being. I know his wife, Jill, as well, who's a wonderful person. And that I hope to be able to work with Joe to move him in a more progressive direction. And I think Joe is a good politician, and he understands that in order to defeat the president, in order to defeat Trump, he's going to have to bring new people into his political world, and that he's going to have to listen to their needs, young people, working people, and maybe start moving in a different direction to some degree than he has in the past.
Now, I listened to your announcement today online. I know that you said the same thing about Vice President Biden essentially today. Is that an endorsement? Is that a full-throated endorsement of Joe Biden?
Well, that we're going to be talking to Joe, and we are, and we're talking to his team of advisors. But what I have said, I can tell you this, Stephen, what I said from the first day that I announced my intention to run for president, I will do everything that I can to make sure that Donald Trump is not reelected, because I believe Trump has been the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. And we're seeing his narcissism, his ignorance playing out in terms of the pandemic we're experiencing right now. So I will do everything I can, but I will say that we are, talking to Joe, and we're talking to his team about how we can work together.
So you'll have those conversations and then decide just how full your throat will be when you endorse him?
Right. Well, that's what we're working on right now, is how we can best go forward together.
What could he adopt? What is the thing that Joe Biden could say that you think would best invite your followers into his camp? Because there's still hard feelings from some of Hillary's people, that feeling that your endorsement was not full-throated enough in 2016. What could Joe do to win over his people?
I would just say that in terms of 2016, I worked as hard as I could to see that Trump was not elected.
Okay.
But,
so what could Biden say to invite your followers?
Look, it's no secret. I mean, the facts are pretty clear that during this campaign, we did very, very well with younger people. And by that, I mean not just people 20 years of age, but people 50 years of age or younger. And Joe did very, very well with older people. And I think what Joe has to do, and I think he will do, is look at what are those issues that young people and working class people who supported me, what are they concerned about? And to the degree that he's prepared, and I think he is in many respects, to raise the minimum wage to a living wage of at least $15 an hour, to be bold on the issue of climate change, which is a huge issue for young people all across this country. And I just read a statement that he made today, and I think he is moving in that direction, to make public colleges and universities tuition free. I think he is prepared to move in that direction, which would be a big deal for the young people in this country, to be very bold. And I think he's prepared to do that on immigration reform. Right now, today in America, because of Trump, you got millions and millions of wonderful people who have been in this country for decades, who are working hard. They're working right now, today, on dangerous jobs, but they are scared to death that they may be deported because of Trump. I think Joe Biden understands how wrong that is, and it's prepared to make changes on criminal justice, an issue that young people and people of color feel very strongly about. I think Joe understands this issue, that it is wrong that we have more people in jail than any other country. So many lives have been wasted, and what we can do about mass incarceration. So I think if he is prepared, he's not going to come to where I am. His views are different. He campaigned differently. But if he can indicate, I think, to the American people, to our supporters, that he is listening, that he is prepared to move forward, that he is prepared to make it clear that as president, he will take on very, very powerful special interests, on Wall Street, in the insurance industry, in the pharmaceutical industry. I will tell you, Stephen, having been all over this country, that the pharmaceutical industry is properly detested by the American people, because the average American knows that they're getting rich while so many of our people can't afford the medicine that they need. So, I mean, I think of Joe, he's not going to adopt my platform. I got that. All right. But if he can move in that direction, I think people will say, you know what, this is a guy who we should support and will support.
Well, we have to take a little bit of a break, but when we come back, I will ask the senator about the legacy of his campaign and how the progressive agenda moves on from here. Stick around.